The little girl ran as fast as her legs could carry her. Rain poured down in thick sheets, soaking her small frame and weighing down her backpack. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest, and tears mixed with the raindrops streaking down her cheeks. She barely noticed the cold, the wetness, or the mud clinging to her shoes. She had one thought in her mind, one desperate hope, that someone could help her mother. She didn't know what to do or where to go. Her mother had been attacked just a few hours earlier, and now she was in the hospital fighting for her life. The little girl had never felt so scared in her entire life. She had left school early, running past familiar streets that now seemed strange and threatening under the gray sky. People hurried past her without noticing, their umbrellas shielding them from the storm, their faces focused on their own lives. She wanted to scream, to tell someone to help, but her voice felt stuck in her throat. All she could do was run, holding on to the hope that someone, anyone, could make the terrible situation better. The little girl thought about the people she knew who could help. She considered calling a neighbor, but the people around them were mostly strangers and had never been kind to her mother. She thought about going to the police, but she didn't know how to explain everything clearly, and she was afraid the police wouldn't take her seriously. Then she remembered something she had seen on TV, something she had read in newspapers, the face of the city's most successful CEO, a woman known for her strength, intelligence, and power. She had seen photos of her attending charity events, helping the poor, and making big decisions that changed the lives of many people. The little girl didn't know if this woman could really help her, but she had no other choice. She had to try. The CEO's office was tall and intimidating, a modern building with glass walls that reflected the rainy sky. The little girl pushed the doors open, her soaked clothes sticking to her tiny body. She took a deep breath and knocked on the door, her small knuckles barely making a sound. Seconds felt like hours. The CEO, sitting behind a large desk covered with papers and electronic devices, looked up from her work. She was busy reviewing contracts and financial reports, but the sound of the knock caught her attention. She stood adjusting her suit jacket and opened the door to see a little girl standing there, trembling and soaked. The little girl's eyes were wide, filled with fear and desperation. She opened her mouth, but only a small whisper came out at first. Then, gathering all her courage, she finally said, "They hurt my mom. She's dying." The CEO froze. She had dealt with high-pressure situations, business negotiations, and financial crises, but she had never heard words like these from a tiny voice. The CEO's mind raced. What had happened? Who had hurt the little girl's mother? And most importantly, what could she do to help? She motioned for the little girl to come inside, and the girl stepped in cautiously, shaking from the cold and the rain. The CEO knelt down to the girl's level and asked softly, "What happened? Tell me everything." The little girl took a shaky breath and began to explain. She told the CEO that her mother had been working late at a small store near their home when two men had come in. They had demanded money, and when her mother refused, they attacked her. The little girl's voice trembled as she described the scene, her small hands gripping the CEO's sleeve for comfort. She said that her mother had fallen to the ground, bleeding, and that the attackers had run away before anyone could help. The CEO felt a surge of anger and sadness. She could see the fear and pain in the little girl's eyes, and she knew she had to act quickly. She immediately called the hospital to check on the mother's condition, speaking firmly and clearly to ensure that everything possible was being done. Then she turned to the little girl and said, "We're going to help your mom. You don't have to be afraid anymore." The little girl's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of relief. She had been holding on to so much fear, so much worry, and now someone was taking her seriously, someone was going to help. The CEO took her hand and led her to the car, insisting on driving her to the hospital herself. The rain continued to pour, but the little girl felt a sense of safety she hadn't felt since the attack. On the way to the hospital, the little girl told the CEO more details. She described the attackers, their faces, the way they had spoken, and the direction they had gone after leaving the store. She explained that she had seen the whole thing from a distance, hidden behind a corner, and had rushed home to get help. The CEO listened carefully, taking mental notes. This information would be crucial for the police, she realized, and the girl had done an amazing job remembering everything, despite the trauma she had just experienced. At the hospital, the mother was in critical condition. Doctors were working quickly to stabilize her, and the CEO offered to cover all medical expenses without hesitation. She spoke to the doctors, arranging the best possible care and ensuring that the little girl's mother would receive attention immediately. The little girl watched in awe as the CEO moved through the hospital with authority and compassion, doing everything she could to help someone she had never met before. The mother was barely conscious when she first saw her daughter. Weak and in pain, she tried to speak, but her words were faint. The little girl leaned close, holding her mother's hand and whispering that everything would be okay, that help had arrived. The mother's eyes filled with tears, both from relief and from the pain she was feeling. The CEO stayed nearby, quietly giving them space but ready to step in at any moment. As the hours passed, the little girl stayed by her mother's side, watching the doctors work tirelessly. She felt a strange mixture of fear, hope, and gratitude. She had come to a stranger, a powerful woman, and in her moment of greatest need she had found someone who cared deeply about her family. The CEO, in turn, was struck by the little girl's courage and determination. Despite her age, the girl had taken action when it mattered most, and her bravery had made all the difference. Throughout the night, the CEO and the little girl worked together to ensure the mother received the care she needed. The CEO called her contacts, arranged for additional medical support, and made sure that the hospital had everything necessary for a successful recovery. The little girl, exhausted but determined, stayed awake, holding her mother's hand and whispering words of comfort. By the morning, the mother's condition had stabilized. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, and the little girl finally allowed herself to breathe. She hugged her mother tightly, tears streaming down her face. The CEO smiled, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and relief. She had come to the hospital as a stranger, but now she was part of this family's story, part of their fight for survival. The little girl looked at the CEO with wide eyes, still overwhelmed by everything that had happened. She whispered a quiet thank you, not fully understanding the weight of the gesture she had just received, but knowing it had saved her mother's life. The CEO knelt down again, looking into the girl's eyes, and said, "You were very brave. Never forget that. You did the right thing by coming to me, and together we made sure your mom is safe." The little girl nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears. She had learned something important that night. Sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, and courage can take many forms. She had faced fear, taken action, and found hope in a place she never imagined. And for the CEO, this encounter would stay with her forever. A reminder that real power is not just about wealth or influence, but about caring enough to step in when it truly matters. The rain had stopped by the time they left the hospital. The city looked different now, softer somehow, as if the storm had washed away some of the darkness. The little girl held her mother's hand tightly, and the CEO walked beside them, a silent protector and ally. Together they had faced a night of fear, despair, and uncertainty, and they had come through stronger on the other side. The little girl knew that her life, her mother's life, and their future had been changed forever by one brave decision, one knock on a door, and the willingness of a powerful stranger to care. The night after the little girl had brought the CEO to her mother's side was quiet, but tense. The hospital rooms were filled with the low hum of machines and the occasional whisper of nurses checking vital signs. The little girl sat in a chair next to her mother's bed, her small hands clasped together, fingers entwined as if they could hold the worry at bay. She hadn't slept since the attack, her mind filled with images of the two men who had hurt her mother, and every sound in the hospital made her jump. The CEO had stayed through the night, walking the hallways, speaking quietly with the doctors, and checking on the mother every hour. She had insisted that she would not leave until she knew the mother was stable. She had never done anything like this before, and yet being there felt necessary. She had spent her life solving problems that involved money, strategy, and influence, but this was personal, real, and raw. She had no choice but to give her full attention, and she did it without hesitation. By morning, the mother was stable enough to respond. Her eyes fluttered open, and she managed a weak smile at her daughter. The little girl leaned close, tears running down her face, and whispered words of comfort. Her mother tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. The CEO knelt by the bed, quietly reassuring both of them that everything possible was being done. She promised that the little girl's bravery had not been wasted and that justice would be sought. The little girl, despite her exhaustion, knew that they could not wait. She told the CEO everything she remembered about the attack, the way the men had looked, their voices, their movements, and the direction they had fled. She described the car they had used, the color, and even some details of its license plate. The CEO listened carefully, absorbing every word, her mind already turning to how this information could help the police catch the attackers. The CEO called the local police herself, explaining the situation and providing all the details the little girl had given. She made it clear that this was urgent, that the attackers were dangerous, and that the mother had been seriously injured. The officer on the other line promised to prioritize the case. The CEO also arranged for private investigators to work alongside the police, ensuring that no detail would be overlooked. She had never been involved in anything like this before, but the sense of responsibility she felt was overwhelming. The little girl had come to her for help, and she was determined to deliver it. During the day, the mother began to show signs of improvement. Her color returned slightly, and she was able to speak in short sentences. She looked at the little girl with gratitude, and her eyes filled with tears at the thought of what her daughter had done. The CEO stood nearby, offering quiet support, bringing water, and making sure both mother and daughter were comfortable. She also spoke with the doctors about arranging additional tests and care to ensure the mother would have a full recovery. Her involvement was more than financial. It was personal, and she gave it her full attention. The little girl, in turn, was learning to cope with her feelings of fear and helplessness. She realized that even though the world could be frightening, there were people who could be trusted and who would fight for what was right. The CEO, though stern and serious in her business dealings, had shown warmth and kindness that night, proving that power could be used to protect and help others. The little girl clung to that hope, feeling safer than she had in hours, even days. Throughout the day, the CEO spoke gently to the little girl, asking about school, her friends, and small details of her life. She wanted to understand the girl beyond this crisis, to connect on a human level. The girl, though still cautious, began to open up, sharing her love for reading, her dreams of becoming a teacher, and her deep concern for her mother's health. The CEO listened intently, impressed by her maturity and resilience despite her young age. She felt a growing responsibility not just to solve the immediate crisis, but to ensure the girl's future was protected as well. By evening, the hospital room had a calm that had been missing the day before. The mother was resting comfortably, the little girl was seated beside her, and the CEO sat quietly in a chair reviewing the plan for the next steps. They had to ensure that the attackers were caught and that the family would be safe going forward. The CEO made phone calls to coordinate with investigators, tracking leads and making sure the police had all the information necessary. She was relentless, her mind working through every possible scenario, every detail that could make the difference between justice and failure. The little girl, though exhausted, stayed awake with the CEO for a while, asking questions about how the police would find the men and if her mother would be okay. The CEO answered honestly, assuring her that everything was being done and that the mother was strong and would recover. She praised the little girl's courage, telling her that she had done something remarkable by seeking help and providing accurate information. The girl smiled faintly, feeling a sense of pride and relief. She had been scared and alone, but now she knew she was not helpless. As the night went on, the CEO reflected on the situation. She had never thought of herself as a hero or someone capable of making a direct impact in a situation like this, but she realized that sometimes action mattered more than wealth or influence. The little girl's bravery had forced her to step out of her comfort zone, to use her power for something profoundly meaningful. She felt a deep sense of connection to the girl and her mother, a responsibility that went beyond professional duty. In the following days, the CEO continued to visit the hospital, spending time with the family, ensuring they had everything they needed. She brought small comforts like books and snacks for the little girl, and checked that the mother was receiving the best care possible. She coordinated with investigators, keeping the little girl informed in ways she could understand, explaining that the men who hurt her mother would be found and held accountable. The girl felt a growing sense of hope, realizing that justice was within reach. Through all this, the bond between the CEO and the little girl grew stronger. The girl learned to trust her, to rely on her guidance, and to feel supported in a way she had never experienced before. The CEO, in turn, found herself inspired by the girl's courage, resilience, and unwavering love for her mother. She began to see the world differently, understanding that true strength came not from money or power, but from the willingness to act when it mattered most. The days turned into a week, and the mother's health steadily improved. She regained some strength and could sit up in bed, speak in full sentences, and interact more with her daughter. The little girl was more relaxed, her laughter occasionally breaking through the tension of the hospital environment. The CEO continued her efforts, ensuring that medical care, security, and emotional support were all in place. She had become a part of their lives, not just a rescuer, but a friend and mentor. By the end of the week, the CEO had made arrangements for ongoing care and support for the family. She had coordinated with local authorities to ensure the attackers were being actively pursued and had set up a plan for the little girl's safety and education going forward. The family was slowly beginning to feel a sense of normalcy again, and the little girl was finally able to breathe easier, knowing that her mother was safe and that she had someone powerful and compassionate watching over them. The CEO reflected on the events with a sense of fulfillment. She had encountered fear, pain, and injustice, but she had also witnessed courage, hope, and resilience. She knew that the little girl's actions had made a difference, and she was determined to continue supporting them until justice was served and their lives returned to stability. The experience had changed her as well, reminding her of the importance of empathy, action, and the human connections that mattered most. The little girl, too, felt a change within herself. She had faced her fears, taken action in a moment of crisis, and found hope and support from someone she had only seen in magazines and on TV. She realized that even the smallest person could make a big difference when they acted with courage and determination. And she understood that sometimes the world held people who, despite their power and success, could show kindness, compassion, and unwavering support when it mattered most. Together, they had faced a nightmare and had begun to turn it into a story of hope and survival. The little girl, her mother, and the CEO had formed a bond that would endure far beyond the hospital walls. They had learned from each other about courage, compassion, and the importance of standing up when it mattered most. And as the sun rose on another day, there was a quiet sense of optimism that even in the darkest moments, help, hope, and humanity could shine through. The days following the mother's stabilization were filled with a mixture of hope, worry, and preparation. The CEO stayed closely involved, knowing that the little girl needed not only her mother's recovery, but also the assurance that justice would follow. The little girl spent her days at her mother's side, talking quietly, brushing her hair, reading stories, and sometimes just sitting silently holding her hand. Despite the fear that lingered from the attack, she was slowly learning to feel safe again. The CEO, meanwhile, coordinated with the hospital staff, investigators, and police officers to make sure every possible step was taken to track down the men who had hurt the mother. The little girl had given a detailed description of the attackers, and the CEO knew it was essential that every piece of information be used effectively. She arranged meetings with private investigators and law enforcement to go over every detail the girl remembered: the men's height, their build, the way they moved, the car, and even small habits she had noticed. The investigators were impressed with the little girl's observations and the accuracy of her memory. Despite her young age, she had noticed details that adults might have missed. The CEO quietly praised her, telling her that she had already done something incredible by helping the police with this information. Meanwhile, the mother slowly regained strength. She could sit up for longer periods and was able to eat small meals. Though weak, she smiled more often and spoke with a little more confidence. The CEO encouraged her to rest, but also reassured her that her safety and recovery were being taken care of. She made sure the mother understood that they were not only addressing the immediate threat, but also creating a longer-term plan to protect both her and her daughter. The mother's gratitude toward the CEO was profound, as she realized the magnitude of what was being done on her behalf. The little girl, though still wary, began to regain some of her normal routine. She was able to focus on small joys, reading her favorite books, drawing pictures for her mother, and talking to the CEO about school and dreams for the future. The CEO noticed how important it was for the girl to regain a sense of normalcy, to feel that life could be good again despite the recent trauma. She spent time listening to the girl, learning about her interests and fears, and providing reassurance that she was not alone. One afternoon, the CEO brought the little girl and her mother into a private meeting room with investigators. She wanted them to see that action was being taken, She explained that the information the girl had given was being used to track down the men responsible, and that the police were actively following leads. The little girl's eyes widened, a mixture of fear and hope coursing through her. She had never expected that her words could carry so much weight, could lead to real action that might bring justice. The mother squeezed her daughter's hand, whispering a quiet thank you for her bravery. Over the next few days, updates came from the police. They had identified suspects and were monitoring their movements. The CEO ensured that the girl and her mother were informed in a gentle and understandable way. She also took extra precautions, arranging additional security at the mother's home and hospital visits. The girl learned that safety could come in many forms, not only from her own vigilance but also from the careful planning and help of others. She began to relax slightly, trusting the adults around her who were committed to protecting her family. During one visit, the CEO took the little girl aside and spoke quietly. She told her that courage was not just about fighting back, but about taking action when it mattered, about trusting the right people, and speaking up when something was wrong. The little girl listened intently, absorbing each word. She realized that she had been brave by seeking help, and that her actions were part of what would bring justice. The CEO also reminded her that being cautious was wise, and that she should always rely on adults she trusted when she felt unsafe. As the mother continued to recover, the CEO arranged for them to have a safe place to stay outside the hospital, a quiet home where they could rest and heal. She coordinated with hospital staff to ensure proper medical follow-up, and with local authorities to maintain protection. She also brought small comforts, books, games, and other items to make the little girl feel at home and help her cope with the stress of the past days. The CEO understood that while the immediate danger was being addressed, the emotional scars needed care as well. The little girl gradually started to speak more openly about what had happened, sharing memories, fears, and moments she had kept to herself. She talked about her mother's strength, her own feelings of fear and helplessness, and the hope she felt when the CEO had listened and acted. The CEO listened without judgment, offering encouragement and understanding. She saw the resilience in the girl, the determination to protect her family, and the wisdom beyond her years. Weeks passed, and progress continued. The investigators shared more updates about the case, giving the family hope that the attackers would be caught. The mother grew stronger each day, able to move more freely and regain some independence. The little girl's confidence began to return, strengthened by the CEO's steady presence and reassurance. She began to think about school, about friends, and about a future that felt possible again. The CEO saw these small steps as milestones, proof that healing was taking place. The CEO also reflected on her own life. She had spent years building wealth and influence, but this experience had reminded her of the importance of compassion, action, and connection. She realized that true impact was not measured by money alone, but by the difference one could make in the lives of others. The little girl's courage and the mother's resilience had shown her that human connection could be more powerful than any business deal or financial transaction. One evening, the little girl and her mother were sitting quietly in their new temporary home when the CEO arrived with a warm meal. She sat with them, asking about their day, listening to their stories, and sharing small bits of encouragement. The little girl told her about her favorite book and how she hoped to return to school soon. The mother shared her gratitude, expressing how much it meant to have someone not only care but take action. The CEO smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment that could not be measured in money or success. Together, they began to talk about the future. The CEO discussed options for ensuring the family's continued safety, medical care, and education. The little girl listened, excited about possibilities she had never imagined. She realized that even after trauma, life could hold hope and opportunity, and that the people who cared about her could help her achieve it. The mother, too, felt a sense of relief, knowing that they were not alone and that their family had support beyond their immediate circle. As the investigation progressed, the CEO continued to act as a bridge between the family and the authorities. She ensured that updates were shared appropriately, that precautions were taken, and that the family felt safe and informed. The little girl and her mother began to understand that justice was not an abstract concept, but something tangible, brought closer by the courage and dedication of those who acted on their behalf. In quiet moments, the little girl reflected on what had happened. She thought about the fear she had felt, the decision to knock on a stranger's door, and the relief that had followed. She understood that bravery could take many forms: speaking up, seeking help, and trusting the right people. The CEO's actions had shown her that even powerful adults could use their influence to protect and care, not just for themselves but for those who needed it most. By the end of Part 3, the family had begun to regain a sense of stability. The mother was recovering, the little girl was learning to feel safe again, and the CEO had become a trusted ally, committed to supporting them through the next steps. The investigation continued, and hope was slowly replacing fear. The bond between the little girl, her mother, and the CEO had grown stronger, rooted in trust, courage, and compassion. They had faced darkness together and were beginning to step into the light, prepared to face whatever challenges might come next with determination and unity. The investigation into the attack continued with renewed intensity. The CEO had used her connections and influence to make sure that every lead was followed thoroughly, leaving no room for mistakes. The little girl, now more confident and composed, spent her days by her mother's side, helping with small tasks and learning to regain some sense of normal life. Despite the lingering fear from the incident, she was slowly feeling safer and more supported. The CEO had become a constant presence, someone who made her feel protected and understood, a reassuring figure she could trust completely. Early one morning, the CEO received a call from the investigators. They had found promising leads that might identify the attackers. She immediately relayed the news to the little girl and her mother, explaining in simple, reassuring words what was happening. The little girl's eyes lit up with a mix of hope and relief. She had been carrying the weight of fear and uncertainty for weeks, and now there was a tangible step toward justice. The mother, too, felt a wave of relief. Knowing that the attackers might soon be held accountable brought a sense of security that had been missing since the incident. The CEO arranged for additional security measures at their home and hospital visits. She coordinated with local authorities to make sure the family could move safely and without fear. The little girl began to understand that safety was not just about avoiding danger, but also about being surrounded by people who could protect and guide her. She felt empowered in a way she had never experienced before, knowing that someone with influence and care was fighting on her family's behalf. As the investigation progressed, the mother's health continued to improve. She was gaining strength each day, able to move around more freely and participate in simple activities with her daughter. The CEO ensured that the medical team had everything they needed, including additional resources for therapy and rehabilitation. The little girl watched as her mother regained independence, her smile returning and her laughter echoing softly through their temporary home. It was a small but meaningful victory, proof that their lives were slowly returning to normal. During this time, the CEO also focused on supporting the little girl emotionally. She brought books, games, and small comforts, creating an environment where the girl could feel safe and begin to heal from the trauma. They spent time talking about school, dreams, and the future, allowing the girl to reconnect with the sense of hope and possibility she had lost. The CEO encouraged her to share her thoughts and feelings, reassuring her that it was okay to feel fear, sadness, or anger, and that expressing these emotions was part of healing. One afternoon, the investigators reported that they had identified the attackers and were preparing to move in for arrests. The CEO explained the situation to the little girl in simple terms, emphasizing that the people who hurt her mother would be held accountable and that she and her mother were safe. The little girl listened intently, her small hands gripping the CEO's arm in relief. She had done her part by providing critical information, and now the authorities were acting. The sense of justice being served brought a feeling of closure, even as the final steps of the process were still underway. The mother, now stronger and more aware of her surroundings, expressed gratitude to the CEO. She knew that without her intervention, her family might still be in danger or without the resources needed for recovery. The CEO reassured her that she was not alone, and that support would continue as long as needed. The mother's trust and appreciation were deeply moving, reminding the CEO why she had stepped into their lives with compassion and determination. The day the attackers were apprehended was tense, but filled with relief. The police had acted swiftly, using the information provided by the little girl and the CEO's coordination to locate and arrest the men. The little girl, though nervous, felt a wave of empowerment knowing that her voice had contributed directly to justice being served. The mother hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face, proud of her daughter's courage and resilience. The CEO stood nearby watching the moment with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the fear that had haunted this family was beginning to fade. In the days that followed, the family began to settle back into a more normal routine. The CEO continued to visit, offering guidance and support, and ensuring that the mother and daughter had everything they needed for a smooth transition back to everyday life. The little girl resumed her studies, her laughter becoming more frequent and her confidence steadily returning. She had faced an unimaginable challenge and had emerged stronger, bolstered by the unwavering support of the CEO. The CEO reflected on the experience with a profound sense of fulfillment. She had always measured success in terms of business achievements, wealth, and influence. But this situation had reminded her that true impact was measured in lives changed, fear alleviated, and hope restored. She had witnessed bravery, resilience, and the power of compassionate action, lessons that would remain with her forever. The mother, now recovering well, expressed her gratitude repeatedly, both for the CEO's intervention and for the courage of her daughter. She knew that their lives had been transformed by these events. Not only had they survived a terrifying ordeal, but they had also found support, security, and hope for the future. The little girl, growing stronger each day, began to see that even in the darkest moments people could step forward and make a difference. Her bravery had inspired others, and the CEO's actions had shown her the value of trust and human connection. The bond between the CEO, the mother, and the little girl had grown deeper, rooted in shared experience, trust, and mutual care. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and danger together, and they had come through stronger on the other side. The CEO continued to mentor and support them, not just in immediate needs but also in building a stable and hopeful future. She provided guidance on safety, education, and emotional resilience, ensuring that the little girl would grow up with a sense of security and empowerment. As the family moved forward, the CEO remained a steady presence in their lives. She helped them navigate the aftermath of the attack, ensuring that they were protected, supported, and empowered. The little girl learned that bravery could take many forms, speaking up, seeking help, and trusting the right people, and that these actions could create real change. The mother, now strong and more confident, embraced the support and friendship offered by the CEO, grateful for the life-saving intervention and ongoing guidance. The community around them also began to notice the story. People learned of the little girl's courage, the mother's resilience, and the CEO's compassionate action. The narrative spread quietly at first, but it eventually became a source of inspiration, showing that ordinary and extraordinary people could come together to create change, protect the vulnerable, and bring justice. The little girl, though still young, understood the power of her voice and her actions, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose and hope. By the end of this chapter in their lives, the family had not only survived a traumatic ordeal but had begun to heal and rebuild. The mother was stronger, the little girl more confident and brave, and the CEO had become a trusted mentor and protector. The attackers were behind bars. The immediate danger had passed, and the family had begun to envision a future filled with security, hope, and opportunity. Together they had faced darkness and found light, proving that courage, compassion, and action could transform lives and create a sense of lasting safety and hope. The family had finally begun to settle into a sense of normalcy. The mother had fully recovered from the attack, regaining her strength and her confidence. She could walk without assistance, prepare meals, and participate in daily life with her daughter. The little girl had returned to school, carrying herself with a quiet confidence that came from surviving a terrifying ordeal, and knowing she had taken action that made a difference. She was no longer the frightened child who had run to a stranger's office in the pouring rain. She had grown braver and stronger, shaped by her experiences and the support she had received. The CEO continued to be a steady presence in their lives. She had made arrangements to provide long-term support, ensuring the family had access to health care, educational opportunities, and a secure home environment. She visited frequently, sharing meals, reading with the little girl, and offering guidance and mentorship. The bond between them had deepened, rooted not only in gratitude but in trust and genuine care. The CEO had seen firsthand the courage and resilience of both mother and daughter, and she had come to admire them deeply. One afternoon, the CEO and the little girl sat in the garden of their new home, a quiet place surrounded by flowers and soft sunlight. The little girl had brought a notebook and was sketching pictures of their family and the home, her drawings filled with color and life. She looked up at the CEO and asked questions about the people who had helped them, about courage, and about how to face fears in the future. The CEO answered patiently, sharing lessons about strength, determination, and the importance of using one's resources to protect and support others. The mother joined them, bringing tea and smiling warmly at the scene. She had grown closer to the CEO, seeing her not just as a benefactor but as a friend and protector. The days of fear and uncertainty were behind them, replaced by hope and the knowledge that they were safe. The mother expressed her gratitude quietly, understanding that their lives had been changed not just by survival, but by the actions of someone who had cared enough to intervene. Meanwhile, the investigation into the attackers had concluded. The men were held accountable for their actions, facing legal consequences that reflected the severity of their crimes. The little girl and her mother felt a sense of closure, knowing that justice had been served and that the threat had been removed from their lives. The CEO had played a pivotal role in ensuring that this process moved swiftly and effectively, using her influence to advocate for the family and provide crucial information to the authorities. As the weeks passed, the little girl grew more confident and engaged in her daily activities. She returned to school fully, reconnecting with friends and teachers and sharing her experiences in ways that helped her process the trauma. The CEO continued to mentor her, encouraging her curiosity, her love of learning, and her resilience. She emphasized that bravery and intelligence often went hand in hand, and that using both wisely could help shape a positive future. The mother, now fully recovered, began to participate in community activities, sharing her story quietly with those who might benefit from it. She spoke about resilience, hope, and the importance of seeking help when in danger. She had learned that even in moments of fear, reaching out could change the outcome dramatically. Her relationship with her daughter had strengthened, their bond now unbreakable after enduring such hardship together. And the CEO remained a guiding figure, offering support and reassurance as they navigated their new normal. The family began to rebuild their lives with a renewed sense of purpose. The little girl focused on her education, inspired to pursue her dreams with the knowledge that she had already demonstrated extraordinary courage. The mother focused on providing a stable, loving environment, strengthened by the help and support they had received. The CEO continued to guide and mentor, helping them make long-term decisions that ensured security, well-being, and opportunity. Over time, the family began to share their story more openly, not as a tale of fear and suffering, but as a story of hope, courage, and the power of compassionate action. They spoke about how a single knock on a door, a brave plea for help, and the intervention of someone willing to act had transformed their lives. The little girl had learned that even in the darkest moments one could find allies, strength, and the possibility for a brighter future. The mother had learned that courage could take many forms and that seeking help was a sign of strength, not weakness. The CEO, reflecting on the experience, realized that her life had also been changed. She had witnessed firsthand the power of compassion, the courage of a young girl, and the resilience of a mother determined to survive. She had learned that true influence was measured not by wealth or status, but by the difference one could make in the lives of others. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment and a renewed commitment to using her position to create meaningful change. Months later, the family had fully integrated back into their community, living safely and with confidence. The little girl thrived in school, excelling academically and socially, supported by the lessons she had learned about courage and resilience. The mother continued her daily life with strength and independence, grateful for the second chance she had been given. The CEO remained an important presence, a mentor, protector, and friend, continuing to guide them through the challenges and opportunities that life presented. Together, they had overcome fear, trauma, and uncertainty. They had faced darkness and emerged stronger, bonded by experience, trust, and shared humanity. The little girl had proven that even the smallest voice could make a powerful difference. The mother had demonstrated resilience and the strength of love. The CEO had shown that influence, when used with compassion, could transform lives in ways far beyond business or money. The story of this family became a quiet inspiration for those around them. It illustrated the importance of courage, the value of seeking help, and the transformative power of compassionate action. The little girl had learned that bravery came in many forms and that even in the worst moments, hope could shine through. The mother had learned the importance of support and resilience. The CEO had learned that true impact was found in the lives one touched with care and action. As the sun set over their home one evening, the little girl sat with her mother and the CEO in the garden, surrounded by the warmth of friendship and the sense of safety they had fought so hard to regain. The air was calm, filled with the quiet satisfaction of having survived, healed, and grown stronger. The little girl looked up at the CEO, gratitude shining in her eyes, and whispered a quiet thank you. The CEO smiled, knowing that this was the result of courage, care, and determination. In the end, the family had not only survived a terrifying ordeal, but had built a life filled with hope, security, and love. The little girl had grown in strength and wisdom, the mother had regained her health and confidence, and the CEO had found a deeper understanding of the power of compassionate action. Together they had shown that even in the face of fear, humanity, courage, and empathy could create a lasting difference, transforming lives and shaping a future filled with possibility and hope. Even after the immediate danger had passed, the little girl's life continued to be shaped by the events she had experienced. She had faced a trauma that no child should ever endure, yet she had emerged resilient, brave, and full of determination. Her mother had fully recovered, but they both understood that healing was a long journey that involved emotional, physical, and social recovery. The CEO remained a constant presence, guiding them not just through immediate challenges but also through the process of rebuilding their lives and creating a future full of possibilities. The little girl started to engage more with her community. She returned to school, excelling academically but also forming stronger friendships. The teachers noticed a newfound confidence in her, a sense of responsibility and maturity that went beyond her age. She had learned the value of speaking up, of taking action, and of trusting the right people when facing difficult situations. The CEO encouraged her to pursue interests and talents she had once been too fearful to explore, helping her discover hobbies and activities that brought her joy and a sense of accomplishment. The mother, too, had changed. She had regained her independence and was now actively participating in local community events. She quietly shared her story with others, emphasizing the importance of courage, resilience, and seeking help when needed. She wanted other parents and children to understand that there were people and resources available to help them in times of crisis. Her relationship with her daughter grew stronger, grounded in shared experience, mutual trust, and love. The mother had learned the power of forgiveness, patience, and hope, even in the face of unimaginable fear. The CEO, reflecting on her involvement, recognized how much this family had changed her perspective on life. She had spent years measuring success through wealth, influence, and accomplishments, but now she realized that true impact was measured in the lives touched, the fears alleviated, and the hope restored. She had been moved by the little girl's courage, the mother's resilience, and the strength that can arise from human connection. She continued to mentor the little girl, offering guidance on decision-making, emotional intelligence, and ways to use courage to help others. One afternoon, the CEO arranged a small celebration for the little girl's achievements. They had invited close friends, teachers, and community members to recognize her bravery and determination. The little girl was hesitant at first, unsure if she deserved such attention, but she slowly realized that acknowledging her courage could inspire others. The celebration was filled with laughter, speeches, and expressions of gratitude, highlighting the strength and resilience she had shown in the face of adversity. The little girl's mother watched proudly as her daughter was recognized. She remembered the night of the attack, the fear and the despair, and compared it to the confident young girl before her. She felt overwhelming gratitude for the CEO's involvement, for the support they had received, and for the courage that her daughter had demonstrated. The mother understood that their lives had been forever changed, not only by the trauma, but by the compassion and action of someone who cared deeply about their well-being. The CEO also used this occasion to teach a valuable lesson about gratitude, empathy, and paying it forward. She spoke about how acts of kindness, courage, and support could create a ripple effect, influencing others in ways that might never be fully visible. The little girl listened carefully, understanding that her actions could help others and that bravery was not just for herself, but could inspire and protect those around her. As the weeks turned into months, the family continued to heal and grow. The little girl excelled in school and developed a growing passion for helping others, inspired by the support she had received. She volunteered in small ways at local organizations, assisting younger children and sharing her experiences to help others feel empowered and safe. The mother continued her advocacy quietly, ensuring that other families knew where to find support and protection. The CEO remained involved, guiding them, mentoring, and celebrating every success along the way. The family also spent more time enjoying life together, finding joy in ordinary moments that had once seemed impossible. They visited parks, attended local events, and explored new experiences that built memories of safety and happiness. The CEO joined them on some outings, not as a powerful figure but as a friend, sharing stories, laughter, and moments of connection that strengthened their bond even further. The little girl learned that life could be filled with joy again, and that safety, love, and guidance could coexist even after fear had once dominated her world.